Hello everyone, welcome back to Trek a Day, and today I have a very special, unexpected episode because someone actually recently gifted me the entirety of Star Trek Next Generation Season 3 on LaserDisc. And we're going to take a look at these. I couldn't believe this. I was super excited. They actually messaged me and I had no idea what I was getting. I assumed it was a LaserDisc because it was through the LaserDisc database. Someone from there who watches my first channel and this channel as well. But I had no idea it was going to be two big box sets of Star Trek on LaserDisc, the entirety of TNG Season 3. It's Star Trek TNG Log 5 and Log 6. We'll talk a little bit about what that means, and then take a look at these individually. Star Trek was released on LaserDisc both in the US and in Japan, and to a lesser extent in PAL territories. And in the US, we got them released as individual selections with 2 episodes typically. An episode on each side was usually how they were released here individually, and we got all of TOS and all of Next Generation, part of Deep Space Nine, but none of Voyager here in the US. In Japan, they were released in box sets, and the entirety of the original series, all 7 seasons of Next Generation, and seasons 1 through 5, sadly not the last 2, of Deep Space Nine and Voyager were all released in Japan in box sets. They're the same region and NTSC and everything as in North America, so completely playable. They play in English with Japanese subtitles, depending on the box set, they're either optional or burned in, and then usually they'll have a secondary audio track for the Japanese dub. But so it's the same as watching them in like a US edition, tend to be better quality, and the seasons were split into box sets so that Star Trek Next Generation, this is Log 6, Volume 6, and it's Part 2 of Season 3. So each season was split into 2 different box sets for TNG, DS9, and Voyager. TOS was released 1 box set for each season, like huge sets. But so these were split up so that there would be 14 box sets like this for TNG to have the entire thing on LaserDisc from Japan. Really excited to get these because these are one of the things I want the most on the format. LaserDisc is my favorite format. It's one we're going to be talking a lot about in the future on this channel. I do not have a complete set yet, though, of all the box sets because they're big and heavy, so they're expensive to ship from Japan, and it's hard to find them locally, so it's hard to find them where you're not paying tons of money just to get them shipped across the ocean. So I didn't have any TNG individual releases, but of the box sets, I didn't have any. I had some Deep Space Nine and Voyager, which we'll eventually see on this channel. So very excited, and it's also cool because they come in box sets to get an entire season at once. That's great. And Season 3, I talked about my Star Trek journey in a previous episode. That's the first season that I really start to kind of remember watching, or I was a little bit old enough, and it's one of my favorite seasons of TNG. For me, I think 3 through 6 is probably my favorite era, and I love 3. So we're going to take a look at these box sets, and I'll start with Log 5. So it's Season 3, Part 1, and there's the Obi strip as well down here, which tells you all the information about what is exactly in this set and all the different audio options. It has both English and Japanese audio tracks, and it has optional Japanese subtitles along the bottom, and they are actually LDG compatible, which means you can actually kind of move them on and off frame, and they are ones that they're optional, so you don't even have to have them for this set. And on the back, and actually in English on the back, the episode listing is beautiful. I love the matte black look, and these look great lined up on the shelf. Great artwork, and we'll get into the individual discs now. Pull out the outer box. We start with the first disc, and the design on the covers is very different for the different releases. Deep Space Nine and Voyager, they put a little more into the cover art of the individual sleeves. There's a lot of unique artwork on them. The TNG was a little more standardized for many of the volumes that I've seen. And it kind of reminds me of a look of what was on some of the VHS tapes of the time, but it has the Ensigns of Command and Evolution. And on the back, You see it still has a very kind of Star Trek look to everything, and it has the episode number, and I do like how they do the episodes 47 and 48, so instead of episodes 1 and 2 of season 3, it's just the overall what is the episode number. And then it has all kinds of information on the side here, a mix of English and Japanese, and then the actual episode description is, of course, fully in Japanese, as Japanese release. And move on to the survivors and who watches the watchers. The bonding and booby trap, which I think is one of the more underrated season 3 episodes. It's one that I've always really enjoyed. I love when you get little bits and pieces of spacefaring cultures that you don't see a whole lot of, not the typical Romulans and Klingons and Federation ships, and I love to get little bits of that. It's always kind of fascinating, and I always liked Picard's passion for archaeology, and like that's always been a cool thing for me. Then we have the enemy and the price. And the enemy is a story that's been told many, many times. The 80s movie Enemy Mine is a good example, but it's one of those, and like an episode Enterprise did the same kind of story. But if it's done, it's one of those that it's a very typical standard story, but if it's done well, it's still very enjoyable, and this I think is one of the better examples. Then we have the Vengeance Factor and the Defector, and the Defector to me is a peak Star Trek episode. It is one of the best of season 3, one of the best in general of TNG. I've always loved that episode. I think it's so well done, so well acted, and so well written and thought out, just beautiful. Then we have the Hunted and High Ground. Move on to Deja Q and A Matter of Perspective. Matter of Perspective is interesting. The standout on this disc for me, though, is Deja Q. It is one of my favorite Q episodes. There will be many Q videos down in the future. I actually have a LaserDisc box set that is a bunch of Q episodes, and that's really fun. We'll look at that eventually. But Deja Q, where Q temporarily loses his powers and has to exist as a human on the Enterprise for a little bit, and it's really enjoyable. It's one of the best of Q. It involves a lot of the mix of comedy and drama that is involved with Q in some of the better episodes. That's the first box set. Now moving on to Log 6, Part 2 of Season 3. Now the OB script again on the bottom. This is a very common standard TNG group shot from this time period, but I still love it. It's very iconic. The same, the episode listing and everything on the back. And it's interesting, on the bottom you can see the original prices for these. The other one was equivalent to about $44, $45 when it first came out, so almost $50 to buy half a season, and this one is $37, so like just shy of like $40 US to buy the other half of the season. So it'd be almost $100 a season back then to get these on LaserDisc, and I love these. Of course you have the Blu-ray remasters and whatever, but LaserDisc is my favorite format, and I like watching Star Trek on it. And for some of the releases, TNG, there are better releases on newer formats, but Deep Space Nine we'll get into in the future. I actually think that the Japanese LaserDiscs, so DS9, look better than the DVDs, and the sound is beautiful, so I just love the way Star Trek is on LaserDisc and these complete sets. And the second part starts with one of the all-time TNG greats, yesterday's Enterprise, and The Offspring. And I just watched this disc last night. I've been kind of watching through a bunch of these after I got these. Really exciting, and watching a bunch of these favorite episodes for the 10,000th time. But The Offspring still brings a tear to my eye towards the end with Lull. And of course, yesterday's Enterprise, an all-time classic. Then Sins of the Father and Allegiance. I am a sucker for any Klingon political drama type stuff, so Sins of the Father, anything that would be in like the Worf Return to Grace collections, that's my jam. And Allegiance, I think, is an underrated one that I never really hear people talk about. One of the best, more comedic episodes, Captain's Holiday, and then we have Tin Man. Always like Captain's Holiday. I know it's kind of like a mix with some people, but I like that. I like Vosh, so I enjoyed that episodes a lot. Then we have Hollow Pursuits and The Most Toys. Sarek and Menage a Troy, so a couple of the parents' episodes, I guess you could call them. And then we end season 3 with Transfigurations and The Best of Both Worlds Part 1. One of the ultimate two-parters, the first real episode of TNG that I vividly remember watching, so a fantastic, one of the best season enders in television history. Real game changer. So that is a look at Star Trek Season 3 on LaserDisc in those box sets, and I'm just blown away. They're exciting, they're wonderful. I love having Star Trek on LaserDisc. My favorite thing on my favorite format. Can't go wrong with that, and I can't believe someone actually just gave me a set on LaserDisc. That was a fantastic gift, and I was shocked. I didn't really, when the package showed up, and like, this is a lot heavier than I was expecting. So really, really cool, a lot of fun. I love it, and look forward in the future. There's going to be a lot more Star Trek on LaserDisc type content because it's something that I really enjoy. And if you have any experience with Star Trek on LaserDisc, if you are a collector like myself and still looking for these sets, let me know down below. I'd love to hear your experience with Star Trek on the format. Definitely a lot of fun to collect for. And as always, if you are into Star Trek, you want a little bit of Trek in your day, every day, remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit the bell, and check back every day for just a couple minutes of enjoying and loving Star Trek.